Hello, everyone, and welcome to the February 20th Product Analytics Group Sync. I'm going to share my screen momentarily to do the billboard review. We have a ton of open issues. Need to dig into scalability investment, investigation and assessment as far as going to GA, but we'll keep refining those. Some of the other issues that have been standing in the billboard for a while have been cleaned up, but I think this one actually just needs a workflow label. And I was just scrolling through to say if there's anything you'd like to call out, otherwise we can move on. But then I caught that we have a few issues that are assigned. So was curious if we can update the workflow label. So Sarabi, before I realized that I was the one not talking. Is there anything you wanted to call out for these two issues as far as like workflow states or where they're at?
No, these have been the primary MR has been merged, but I'm trying to figure out how to test this in staging because somehow I'm not able to test it in staging. It's not available. I'm not sure if it's because this is a security fix, but I have to figure this out today.
Product analytics, unfortunately, is not available. Well, no, that's not true. Staging,
Yes.
it
But
is.
it's a security issue, so I'm not sure. I'm not able to test this feature on staging.gitlab.
I can't remember when we last had staging updated, but I think it was after the custom dashboards pointer was added, Dennis. So this should be testable on staging if
Yeah,
it's hit master.
It's already on production Canary, so it might just be worth testing it in production if you can. If it works there, then you're all good.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just use the next flag. I can't remember. I think you have to go to next.gitlab.com, don't you?
Yeah.
There's like a menu item now. But yeah, next.gitlab. We might want to look into, and someone can write that down the agenda for me, potentially getting a new cluster connected to staging.gitlab, since that's kind of that product analytics cluster and infrastructure management environment is kind of languishing at this point. That way we can validate things a little bit earlier. Cool. And then we've got a couple other create runbooks, things like that. I know there's some active discussion about relocating some of our runbooks. Or some like putting that together.
Yeah, I am currently in the process of moving our runbooks over to the GitLab main runbooks repo. That's in review at the minute, and I've got a draft MR to update our runbook repo to point to that location instead. So
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll update that create runbooks to make a note of that as well.
Great. I'll start including the link to the runbooks repository as well as far as our general availability readiness review, because that's one of the requirements there. Cool. I'm going into problem validation. We have with fill order. Rob, anything we want to call out here?
I have been focusing entirely on SSL and infra-related stuff. I have not dived into this yet. It is on my radar, though. I don't know if we just want to take it out for now, because it's been sitting there for months, or if we just want to leave it floating as a painful reminder that Cube sucks sometimes.
I do think it's something we want to keep in mind, so I'd be happy to keep it here, kind of how we did with logging, because that was definitely a motivator for me. But I'm happy to do it else, whatever else the team thinks.
Let's keep it. I mean, I'm a masochist. It's fine.
Fair enough. Update loading icon's been here for a little bit. I think this just needs someone to go through and refine, but that's up for the taking. Max, you have a confidential issue here. Is there anything you want to cover here?
It's not really confidential. It belongs to a confidential epic, so it has to be marked as confidential, so we can talk about it freely. This is the issue that will be the work involved in displaying, purchasing the add-ons in customers dot. So when you go in, if you bought it, you should be able to see how many licenses you've bought and how much backup storage data you've bought. It kind of works, but it looks really ugly at the moment. So obviously the fulfillment team won't be happy with that. I've spoken to one of the provision full stack engineers who said there's some work we can do in the AI add-on. They've already done quite a lot of it. But I haven't yet nailed down exactly what the scope of that's going to be. So it's possible the actual implementation might move into the next milestone. We'll see.
Fair enough. Cool. This is an issue I created recently coming out of a discussion with Sam and I, something we should be clearly stating, especially with the beta, but particularly when we go to GA, is making sure that when people onboard for well, GA is a little bit different since that'll be a manual process, but currently making people aware of where their data is going when they do sign up for the beta, since we are launching this in the US. So those that are sensitive to where their data is crossing, if it's going from one country to the other, um, for compliance or otherwise other reasons, making that clear before they hit that setup button. So in problem validation right now, but needs design review and things like that. But yeah, just wanted to call that out. We've got an issue for reducing inconsistencies with Grafana metrics. Rob, anything you can call out here?
I have collated a list of differences between Loki and Mimir, and Max has pretty much given the go ahead for the few things I've suggested, but feel free to take a look. Anyone else? I've see if there's anything else you'd like to add to that list of stuff we should do to reduce inconsistencies and make it a bit easier for us to develop visualizations in Grafana.
That's good. Workflow design has all issues are assigned to Graham at the moment. I know this is today's last working day before he goes on PTO for a little bit. So I imagine we'll get an update before he heads out. He does have a coverage issue there. So I'll just move on over to solution validation. We still have groups and admin analytics settings going to a dedicated page. I don't know if there's any update here. We've also got vector event shipping timing out as a potential infrastructure issue that people can look into. Though actually, I think that would technically belong to analytics instrumentation at this point. So this was moved in the milestone, but we have no updates since January. So you can just say that that one's not yet ready to move out. We have an issue for making the cluster deployment repository publicly available. This is part of being able to support self-managed installations, whether they're running self-managed GitLab or will just want to self-manage their own product analytics cluster to connect to their project on gitlab.com. So a little bit of work involved there, making sure the GitLab specific, gitlab.com specific configurations, like how we refer to vault secrets, for example, are moved out of that repository before we probably make a shallow or a copy of that, or whatever the strategy is there, since that is still in solution validation. We have a follow-up on I believe this was the, not SSL, but Rob, if maybe you can explain this better than I can.
Yeah, it was a failure of SSL, but it wasn't the SSL certificates themselves that I fixed. I inadvertently made it so that the load balancer couldn't retrieve newer certificates. And we didn't have any kind of logging in Grafana or any way of figuring that out. We had either connection, but not that combined. So this is a follow-up to try and make sure that we've got runbook documentation and Grafana data available. And I think Halil has figured out how to do alerts now, so maybe getting an alert in place as well, so we get alerted in future. I'm just mapping that out today to get an idea of what we want to work on now compared to what we want to work on in future.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think I was suggesting potentially taking a look or piping in events or error events from the Kubernetes cluster itself, and then we could potentially run an alert on how many times that's happening over the course of a given time frame and respond to that accordingly. Cool. We've got 2 issues in planning breakdown, both assigned to Jan. Anything you want to cover on these 2?
No, I can just give a quick update though. The first issue is a bit of technical debt. I'm busy completing my investigation into that today. I think we can split it up in a nice few iterations, with the first one already having a nice positive impact in wrapping and hiding all of our grid stack stuff and separating that from our analytics business logic, you could say. And the second one is nearly complete, but I've been focusing on the first issue. So once I got that wrapped up, I'll jump back to the 401 errors and yeah, get that ready for development.
Perfect. Cool. And ready for development. We have a few issues here. I think this one's in development, actually. So, Robbie, you've been working on this one for a little bit. Anything? I know there's a comment that you've left, or a number of comments that you've left there in the discussion that's been happening. But anything you want to call out for this issue specifically?
I think it's confidential, and I have attached my findings in the issue, so further read there.
All right. So we'll
I think we
Solid.
can, it's safe to discuss. The only reason I made it confidential is because the screenshots included production data. But the findings are safe to discuss here.
Okay, sure. So I observed that in Snowplow events table, we are receiving newer data with older timestamps. So essentially, maybe the web browsers or the mobile devices are sending newer events with older timestamps. And I've attached some of the data in some of the older events. And whenever we query in real time, those events also get attached to the query. So we get the increase in numbers. So we might need to find out a way, like maybe figure out what to do with those events since we are getting those events, maybe reject them or include them somehow. But if we include them, our dashboards are going to represent inconsistent values.
That's actually, thanks for the summarization. We actually get 4 or 5 different kinds of timestamps by the time it finishes enrichment through Snowplow.
Yeah.
We use derived timestamp, which is supposed to be like reasonably when the event actually occurred, taking into account the user's local time and when we received it. But it might be worth exploring then. We do have a collector timestamp when we particularly receive it, when maybe that's potentially the source of truth, but maybe we can figure out what our options are, and specifically we should bring in analytics instrumentation and get their thoughts on it as well. Because historically we've used derived timestamp because technically you want to see when these users are experiencing it as it happens to them. But if it starts to result in inconsistencies on the dashboards, maybe it's an option that we eventually provide, but we can explore that.
So derived timestamps we are getting for maybe 2-3 months old, and the ETL timestamp and the collector timestamp are of this month. So
Okay.
that's the issue.
So with a collector and ETL, are they still inconsistent between like at the or is it, I guess, less variable if you, or that's,
No,
we have to test that actually, so never mind.
That's like the time difference is very significant. Like it goes up to months. So
okay, I see. All right, so let's or I'm sure that was in the thread. I haven't gotten to it yet, so we can explore that and see what analytics instrumentation thinks.
Yeah, analytics instrumentation are the experts when it comes to all things Snowplow, and they built the whole pipeline structure. They also manage the collector side of things as well. So they'd probably be the best people to get involved to try and figure this out. So it could be something to do with our pipeline, our queuing system, I don't know, or enrichment process, or it could just genuinely be some weird long ass delay on terms of events actually being delivered to us.
Yep,
that's a tough one.
Yeah, it might be worth checking out the Kafka queues to see if there's any potential like backup there as well. But we can dig into it. And just for as a reminder as well, analytics instrumentation basically owns everything up until events get into ClickHouse Cloud. So that's why I was saying Vector as well is potentially going to be or should be their wheelhouse as well. Cool.
Okay.
I have the issue for determining a backup strategy. So there is a backup strategy now for ClickHouse Cloud for GitLab as a whole. I've been working with the working group to kind of establish that. There are engineers assigned to actually implementing that. So I'm all that to say is, if anything, this is kind of ready to move back to ready for development until they have a solution that we can replicate. If we find that this is going to be a 7-day retention window is going to be a blocker to general availability, then we can adjust accordingly in terms of how we want to prioritize it. But for now, we can hopefully get some work that we can effectively copy and paste and save some time on our side. Max, you've got add background worker to push funnel configurations. Anything to call out here?
Not a great deal. I started on it in a quiet moment between billing and review cycles. It's going to be tricky because it's always when you're reading stuff from repositories. But it should be fine. The aim of this one is to create the API endpoint, but then when Hamil's back from PTO, take that API that reads the funnels into some sort of useful JSON, and then push that into the analytics configurator. So yeah, it should be fine. It's on track for this milestone. It kind of depends where the billing stuff fits in. I'm sort of squeezing it in between review cycles at the moment.
Got it. So Robbie, you've got the next one that's confidential. Is there anything you'd want to share, or should we move on?
No, I'm working on it, so it should be done within this week.
Great. Owen's got adding documentation for our natural language querying, since it's only released as a experiment for people to just kind of play with. And Halil's out for the new out at the moment, but he's got the new configurator endpoint and migration for funnels work. Cost data continues to be also pain point where I just need to get to it. So it's just a very nice reminder every time I see it. L1's got a number of issues in review. Just trying to speed up a little bit since we're almost 20 minutes in. And Max, you have a Zora callback for subscriptions if there's anything you'd like to call out there.
It's still going. I probably need to increase the weight on it, to be honest. It's in review with the fulfillment team at the moment. There's nothing else that I need to do right now, so I'm waiting to hear back from Corinna.
Awesome. I can't find my mouse cursor. And I can't get back to my billboard. There we are. For closed issues, this list grows longer. I'm going to just compile a list of what's changed and we'll throw it in the chat or the milestone planning issue. But in the interest of time, I think we can move to the rest of the agenda. But we're clearly shipping a ton of stuff, especially I've noticed the issues closing at a higher rate as we get towards GA. So great work, everyone there. Awesome. As far as the rest of the, well, I'm just going to double check. Can anyone still hear me now that I've stopped sharing my screen? All right, cool. Hardware is still going strong for 20 minutes. Let's go. Call for proposals. I just wanted to solicit any feedback or ideas from everybody, really. As we approach GA, there are, of course, things that have been getting slotted in or moving around as far as what we should do to get towards GA, but not so much of we have this giant bucket of what we think we want to do for after we go generally available. But in conversations I've had with Jan and others, there are ideas of tech that we might want to start to think about or start to address before we start to build upon what is our kind of first initial GA release. So feel free to, we've got lots of epics, lots of issues. Try to do a search if you think you've got an idea. It might already be there. If not, create one, ping the team, and we can dig into it. Before I hand it to Rob for his idea, potentially maybe this is something we can hack together at the summit, but let's see. Rob, you've got a point here.
Yeah, only just having worked on visualization products before, and the ability to share those visualizations is an extremely powerful tool to be able to do that. A different context, obviously, but the same thing would apply. Being able to, within GitLab itself, or even on external platforms like Jira, being able to share our visualization to say for marketing or product or whoever it might be, the organization would be super powerful and works towards our company value of collaboration too. So I'm very much up for being able to do that soon after GA.
Pretty sure we have an issue for this already. I know James is starting to ideate on this, and Sam and I have also been targeting this as potential like near-term or future feature directional items, but definitely let's locate that and let's have a conversation about it. Potentially as well, it might be some tech debt or as far as like prerequisites in terms of we've been talking about pre-aggregations, restoring results and caching, and especially with sharing, there's the question of do you run the query when it's the viewer running the link, or do you store clicks the link, and or is it a snapshot of that data because the person is trying to share? This is what it looked like at this point in time. So a lot of things to chase down there, but maybe some things like pre-aggregations that we need to reach a decision on because that might power some of this stuff.
I want fun things, not hard things like pre-aggregations.
Fair enough. But anyways, let's have a talk about it, and we'll see how we can iterate towards an MVC for sharing. But yeah, Sam, you've got the next point.
Awesome, thanks. So I wanted to take a couple minutes just to kind of take a step back, talk about some of our product strategy, things that we're looking at right now. I know we've been down in the weeds on a lot of the product analytics managed services, as well as some of the features, and wanted to talk a little bit about how all of that relates to each other, as well as GitLab as an overall platform, and also how it ties into our OKRs, which we'll pause the recording for when we get there. But really, I'd like us to look at product analytics, what we're building in terms of there are capabilities and features that are going to go into the product, regardless of where the infrastructure is sitting in the world, whether that's managed by GitLab Inc. or whether a customer is doing it themselves. And there's also going to be a GitLab Inc. managed product analytics cluster and infrastructure offering. So all the work, you know, we've been doing in Zora and Customers Dot and the managed Kubernetes cluster with the ClickHouse services and everything else. In terms of how that relates to what we want with company value, the fact that all of these capabilities are going to go into GitLab Ultimate, that's a big piece of value that we're delivering to customers, and it's going to be enticing to our prospects. If you think about it in terms of some of the other groups within the company, when they add features, they go directly into GitLab Ultimate. There's no unique pricing or packaging there. It's part of an existing tier, or even if it's in GitLab Premium. When we add additional capabilities to a tier like Ultimate, that's increasing the value of that tier for every customer that signs up for it. This is helping them, you know, get more value out of the product to reduce their churn, be more compelling for existing customers to up tier into Ultimate or sign up brand new logos. Those are really the three key things that we want to be doing with the product to help drive the success of GitLab. The GitLab managed product analytics service is an additional thing. So it's going to generate incremental revenue, but it's also generating even more value for those customers so that they find product analytics and GitLab Ultimate conversely even more compelling. And I wanted to talk about how those two are very related, but they're separate things. We're not trying to only do the GitLab managed services things and all of the features that go in Ultimate are an afterthought. They're definitely not. Those are a very compelling piece of value that we need to make sure we're thinking of, you know, even if a customer is doing bring their own cluster, those are going to be our GitLab Ultimate subscribers. We're very happy to have them. And they are providing value to us from a product strategy perspective. So wanted to talk about that because I know in some conversations I've had, it seems like maybe we're focusing almost exclusively on some of the GitLab managed services stuff, but that's, I think, mostly just because that's what we're building right now. We built a lot of the GitLab Ultimate features previously, and we're working on bringing both of those offerings to market at similar times. So when you look at our OKRs and what the coming milestones will have related to bring your own cluster, that's why you're going to start seeing more of those issues related to that, because that's going to enable those customers that are in our GitLab Ultimate customers that are interested in doing their own infrastructure alongside of the different issues and epics that are related to the GitLab managed services offering as well. And so Max, to your point on pricing, I think I might have answered it already, but GitLab Ultimate being where those capabilities sit is how we're packaging that. It's really the managed services that has its own unique pricing and packaging model.
That apply for storage as well. So the licensing essentially would be, I guess, free for self-managed Ultimate customers.
Correct. Yeah. So if you're managing the infrastructure, it's your responsibility to, you know, buy a bigger hard drive.
Yeah, sure.
When you fill up.
The appeal is that because if you don't want to be held to the restrictions that we have and with our pricing, you can, if you're willing to take on the infrastructure and management of it, then you can have as much as you want.
Fine. Cool. Makes sense to me.
Yes, that's in a similar vein to how we do self-managed GitLab. There's an additional cost being on .com compared to just doing it yourself.
Correct.
And part of why we've iterated as well on bringing our own cluster and being able to do things like dive in a little bit more the details of why the project releases the application ID, but needs to be able to reconnect or get the old key back is it's supporting that customer mobility to explore whether or not managed services or self-managed works for them or vice versa, or they might switch multiple times. There's a possible, you know, outcome where a user is like, I like the managed services. I want to try self-managed because I think I can do like, you know, I want to save some money and this and that, and then they find out it's more hassle and they want to come back, and that's why we have this like kind of portability and needed to like refine the experience as well when they connect from one cluster to another.
Cool. If we can pause.
There was a subpoint related to a confidential item, but I just wanted to call out with the AI work. I believe we are the first non-AI group to actually ship a AI assisted workflow using their framework. So great job everyone involved there. And here's to many more. I apologize for the link not working, but I'll just cover the point. We're at time, so if you have to jump, no worries. It's related to all of the bring your own cluster stuff. Graham, Sam, and myself, and as well as Justin Mandel, have actually sat down and kind of walked through bring your own cluster as it pertains to what we want to execute for getting towards general availability and the implications it'll have to the onboarding flow and things like that. But we also walk through conceptually what we're trying to do and what it looks like in the future, and really the complexity involved. Because you can connect to a self-managed product analytics stack to .com. You can also connect to a self-managed GitLab instance. And so it kind of goes into the various deployment models that we're about to get into, apart from just the managed service, because to throw another wrench into that, you could get a managed service and plug that into your own self-managed GitLab instance as well, potentially. But those are all the options. We haven't, we're exploring the capabilities of each side of it, but it's good context of overall in terms of what we can do and what we might head towards once we get past this first GA release. Cool. We have a read-only item from Yevgen as far as show and tell, so check that out. I will fix the permissions on that video, and then I will update it in the agenda on Slack. All right, we're 2 minutes over. It's good to see everybody. Have a good rest of your Tuesday or Wednesday, rest of your week, and take care.
Thanks, everyone.